podcaster Joe Rogan had this to say about Democratic primaries headed into the 2024 presidential election. It's
very clear that this country is being run by a bunch of people other than just the president. I mean, I don't know how much say he has, but it's a lot of other people are involved, and they're not doing such a great job. And they haven't made course corrections very good. There's a lot of mistakes that have been made that didn't have to be made. And that's just how it is. It's just like it's not being run well. And so you have to go, well, who could do it better? Could it be a Republican, or it could be a better Democrat? And if it's not a better Democrat, like, how are we going to get a better Democrat if you don't let the president debate? So they won't let him debate because Robert Kennedy Jr. and what is that other woman's name? Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson, apparently they're both promising candidates for the Democratic Party, but they won't let him debate before the primaries. So it's like, that's not that democratic.
In more 2024 news, House Democrat Yvette Clarke proposed a bill this week that would require political campaigns to clarify when artificial intelligence is being used in advertisements. Fox News reports. This reportedly comes in response to the Republican National Committee's AI Beat Biden ad released last week.
This just in, we can now call the 2024 presidential race for Joe Biden.
My fellow Americans.
This morning, an emboldened China invades Taiwan.
Financial markets are in free fall as 500 regional banks have shuttered their doors.
Border agents were overrun by a surge of 80,000 illegals yesterday evening.
Officials closed the city of San Francisco this morning, citing the escalating crime and fentanyl crisis.
Who's in charge here? It feels like the train is coming off the tracks.
All right, let's get to the easy part first and the second part harder. I actually agree that there should be a label on AI and not just on political advertisements. I think that that's a transparency that probably makes sense as this technology accelerates. Now, I don't have any problem I don't know why people say it's so difficult to tell what's AI and what isn't. At least thus far, it all has that weird sheen to it. There's just kind of a certain look with AI that I don't think is actually that difficult to tell. But that may not be the case, a month from now, let alone 2 years from now. So I actually think this is not a bad idea to put a label on AI.
I agree that AI should definitely be labeled. I think that there can be some generational shifts when it comes to people who can flag AI generated things versus those who can't. I think that many of us, at least millennials and Gen Z, have come up through a process where everybody and their mama is using filters, so we kind of know when something looks a little bit different. But for those who are getting scammed regularly, there was a mom who thought her daughter got kidnapped and she basically got fleeced for thousands of dollars because she was on the phone with somebody who she assumed was her daughter. Same voice, everything. Turned out to definitely not be. I think that we do have to be vigilant in situations like that, but also that holistically, whether it's a political campaign, whether it's a social justice campaign, whether it's in our everyday lives, AI is going to take over soon. So ensuring that we have knowledge of it, also being able to flag what's AI and what's not, is going to be really helpful because, quite frankly, everybody can't tell the difference.
Yeah, everybody can't tell the difference now, and even fewer of us will be able to tell the difference, I think, in the future. But so let's get to the Democratic Party primary. Right? What do you think about the fact that Joe Biden is declining to debate? He's also allegedly he's not going to even run in New Hampshire, right? Because of and maybe you know more about it than I do, but because of the particular rules and the fight between South Carolina and New Hampshire as to who goes first. What do you think about the fact that he's basically assuming that he's going to get the Democratic nomination, especially given what the polls show that about half the Democratic Party doesn't want him to have that nomination?
President Biden will get the Democratic nomination. But more than that, I think that we also have to look at the polling of the individuals who've since jumped into this race and have become announced. Marianne Williamson is polling at less than 4%. There is no real reason for a sitting president who has the history, the legacy, the policy wins that Joe Biden does to take up that time. And I say that in the same vein that I did when former President Trump did not get into primary debates and actually quelled out the primaries to those who challenged him when he ran in 2020. This isn't something that is solely a Democratic Party issue. It's something that Republicans do as well. And it's not just something that happens in presidential elections. The demise of the political debates are happening across this country in state and local elections, as well as those that are county elections, federal elections. We're seeing this happen, and it exists across both parties. Politico actually last fall ran an article on it, basically naming specific cities and states where this is happening and where it's expanding to, because quite frankly, individuals are deciding that it is not the best use use of their campaign time, especially when they are running against someone whose polling is so low and who does not have the name recognition or the backing for them to be considered a serious contender.
Okay, so I think it's true that this is definitely happening in both parties, right? We had, on the Democratic side, we had the Arizona governor candidate refusing to debate and winning the race, right? So, and Trump has now said he doesn't want to debate in certain contexts in his primary, right? So, no, I think this is all bad, though, for democracy. I guess I agree with Joe Rogan here. And that's even if you think that Joe Biden has sealed up the nomination, right? And there's no way that either of these candidates can unseat him. You can have it, you can run an idea that can then take root in a party and lay a basis for something important going forward. Here I'm thinking, for example, Reagan ran against a sitting Republican president in the primary in 1976. He lost, but he gave a very important speech at the convention on the themes of his campaign that then built his base and built a base for the ideas that he became an avatar for in 1980. So I think it's still very important. And I think actually it would be wonderful to have an actual debate in the Democratic Party, for example, on one of the things that RFK Jr. brings to the table. He has that sort of old school anti-corporatist Democratic outlook. I think that would be a very useful thing to put on a stage in today's day and age. And I think it should be debated on the Republican side too.
Someone else who's polling in single digits. There are formats for those individuals to get their viewpoints across. It doesn't just have to happen in a presidential debate. The argument here is interesting to me because, again, not only does it happen across multiple political streams, no matter where you are in this country, where people are deciding whether they want to participate in debates or not, it is also that they're not seeing the return on their investment. Again, this exists more so at the state and local level in terms of many people not even watching debates anymore. That's not where they are making their decisions on who they're going to vote for. Most famously, we also saw this in the Georgia election turn into a runoff for the U.S. Senate just last year. In that, you had the Republican nominee deciding that he was not going to debate in multiple arenas. So I think that there is something to be said about us moving into this new era where those aren't necessarily considered as important as they once were. We're seeing debate calendars change and shift a lot. We're also seeing the number of debates decrease. I think that holistically, it's because we're in a new phase where the people who are probably the folks, especially on the Democratic Party side, who you want to get out to vote the most, those black voters, those young voters, those diverse voters, those aren't people who are generally sitting at home watching your debates anyway.
Look, that could all be true, and I think that's all just negative, right? As in, I don't disagree with you that we're having fewer debates, but I think it's really important for candidates to be able to actually stand in front of the American people without the mediation of media or even of social media. So I think it's really important for candidates to speak directly to the American people.
But can you do that without a debate, though? Can you do that with a debate, though? Because debates are often hosted by the very media you're speaking of. Debates are put on by the very media you're speaking of. I'm totally fine with going back to a Lincoln Douglas debate. Stick them both up there for 2 hours and let them talk to each other for the American people. More Rising after this.